So the two are linked, of course. These American wars are now being funded by the most extraordinary debt, most of which is being serviced by foreign governments, and ironically, a hell of a lot of it by China. We're in the midst of an imperial age in which we have a great military power, the United States, rampant, still rampant. I think what we're likely to get is if say the Democrats, Obama is elected, is an attempt to present a very different face to the world of the Bushes that revives illusions in America's democratic pretensions, not only internationally, but within the United States. The system worked extremely well before Bush. Actually, Clinton, if you tot up wars and things, was a far more violent president than Bush has been. Extraordinary though that may seem, but I believe it is true. So, that's the task that is facing decent people, most of humanity, to stop this. I don't need really to tell you how we stop it. We don't stop it by playing with party conferences and the Labour Party. We stop it by direct action. So, there is, in Iraq, I always am reminded of the great sadness about this country. You know, its history as Mesopotamia, where so much of so-called Western civilization draws its historical roots and inspirations in writing and so on. When I was last there, I walked along Mutanabi Street, which is like the left bank. It's a street of books. It's a street of booksellers. You can get just about everything. I picked up some wonderful second editions of books that went back to the early 20th century, and it was a place where people met and discussed writing, where teachers came, where foreigners came, where students came. It was a very fine place to be. I see that just the other day it was blown to bits in some horrific outrage and bomb, and that we mustn't forget we are rightly counting the dead in these wars, but what this assault on these countries and on all of us is a cultural assault as well. That's terribly important to realise, that the attacks on Iraq were aimed as much at the cultural life, the cultural roots of that country. Museums looted, the art looted, the great places around Babylon blown up, Mutanabi Street now destroyed. You'll remember those scenes in 2003 after the Americans arrived, where they allowed looting except one place, the Ministry of Oil. And that was all deliberate. Rumsfeld, in effect, said it was deliberate. So it's a cultural war, and that cultural war is not just on Iraq, it's on all of us. So let me now invite you really just to ask me some questions.
start with the question and answer session. Just for people's information, there's a sign-up sheet that's doing the rounds. So if you want to find out more about events like this scheduled in the next few months, just put your details there. The way we're going to do this is people can put their hands up so I can see them. It's quite a large room, so you might have to wave a bit. There is a microphone in the middle, just there, and there's a microphone down the front, so if you can come and speak into that so that everyone can hear. What we're going to do is basically take questions in blocks of 3, and then one at a time, one at a time, okay. Questions in blocks of 1. And if you can keep your questions as short as possible, please. Thanks. What do you think? Okay, got a gentleman over there in the red t-shirt.
My question is, at the moment, I think there's a sort of consensus, especially in America, that the surge and other measures have sort of created stability in Iraq. And so I wanted to know, what is your view on this sort of media consensus? And also, what do you think is the current situation in the future for Iraq? Should I sit down?
Well, the surge is fake. And you're right to describe it as a media consensus, because that's all it is. And if you read the reports of a handful of the most extraordinary unembedded journalists, two of them Americans, Nia Rosen, who writes on the net, and Dar Jamal, who has written on the net, and in this country, Patrick Coburn, who writes in The Independent. I urge you to read their reports, because from the front line of Iraq, as it were, they have ripped apart the whole notion of the surge. What the Americans have done is buy off a section of the Sunni resistance, but it's a biding of time for them. It's a biding of time. And what they've done with a lot of input from the Israelis is walled off whole sections of neighborhoods, particularly in Baghdad, that has made some of those neighborhoods appear to be peaceful, but they're not. And the idea that this is being claimed as a victory in the United States, when something like 4 million people have fled Iraq, and that now the poverty rate of children is one of the highest in the world, and that medical supplies simply can't get through, and that the so-called government is permanently holed up within the Green Zone fortress. The idea that this is a claim is really it does say something for the propaganda power of the American media. There's no question about that. It's enormously powerful, and as you heard Chuck Lewis say in that film, he incidentally is a former CBS 60 Minutes reporter, very distinguished television reporter, one of the few who was prepared to speak out. But you heard him say that had there not been this propaganda, then the invasion probably wouldn't happen. That indicates the power of the American media. What will happen? What can happen? Well, they've got to get out tomorrow. Now. There's no question about that. The overwhelming majority of Iraqis on all sides of all the new divides that have been created in that country want them out. Nothing can happen in Iraq until they're out. Getting them out, though, is going to take the efforts of us